My husband blindsided me by announcing he was leaving me at our daughter's graduation ceremony of all places. But what he didn't know was that his humiliation was just beginning. Stick with me while I share my story, and if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like, and sharing it with the people you care about. My name is Emily Walker. I'm 45 years old, a mother of two, and I always thought I had built the kind of family people envied. My husband, David, is 47, a contractor who everyone in our small Midwest town knew as successful, charming, and dependable. To most, he was the kind of man women admired and men respected. To me, he was my partner of over 20 years, the father of my children, and the man I believed would always stand by my side. That's why the moment it all came crashing down still feels like a punch in the stomach. Our daughter Lily had just walked across the stage, her cap tilted, her face glowing with pride. I was smiling through tears, clapping so hard my palms stung. For a moment, my heart was full. My little girl was stepping into her future, and I couldn't have been prouder. The auditorium was buzzing with cheers, cameras flashing, families hugging. I was ready to meet Lily outside, wrap my arms around her, and tell her how proud I was. That's when David cleared his throat, drawing attention. I assumed he was going to congratulate our daughter, maybe say something sweet and fatherly. Instead, his words cut through the joy, like a blade. "I can't keep this inside anymore," he said, standing tall, his voice echoing. "Emily, I'm leaving you. I don't want this marriage anymore." At first, I thought I misheard. People turned their heads, whispers spreading across the crowd. My knees felt weak, my breath caught in my chest. He had chosen this moment, our daughter's moment, to announce he was done with me. Lily's smile vanished, her friends staring in shock. My younger son, Mark, just froze, his face pale. I couldn't move, couldn't speak. Heat crawled up my neck as neighbors, relatives, even strangers stared. Humiliation washed over me, heavier than anything I had ever felt. I wanted the ground to open up and swallow me whole. But I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I stood there, silent, taking it all in, every ounce of betrayal burning itself into my memory. Because in that moment I made a choice. David thought he had broken me in front of everyone. He thought this was his victory. But he had no idea. I was already planning how to turn this around. After the shock at the graduation, memories I had pushed aside came rushing back. For months, David had been different. He worked late almost every night, walking through the door with excuses that never sounded right. His phone was never out of his hand, and whenever I came close, the screen went dark. In our bedroom, the distance was worse. He hardly touched me, barely even looked at me the way he used to. I told myself he was tired, maybe overwhelmed with work, but my gut whispered another story I didn't want to hear. Lily, my 18-year-old, had noticed too. She has always been sharp, ambitious, and protective of me. She would roll her eyes when David brushed me off or acted distracted, but she never said much. My son, Mark, is younger, 15, and quieter than his sister. He sees everything, though, and I caught him watching David sometimes with a look that made my chest ache. The one person I could always talk to was my sister, Susan. She's bold, never sugarcoats anything, and has been my anchor more times than I can count. When I told her about David's late nights and his sudden distance, she didn't hesitate. "He's hiding something, Emily. Don't let him make a fool of you." I brushed her off then, convincing myself I was overthinking. I didn't want to believe the man I trusted with my life was capable of betrayal. But standing in that auditorium, with everyone's eyes on me, I understood. He hadn't chosen that moment out of impulse or nerves. It was deliberate. He wanted to hurt me where it stung most, right in the middle of our daughter's proudest day. It wasn't just leaving me. It was humiliation, a performance. And as that realization sank in, the sting of betrayal grew sharper. The cracks in our marriage hadn't been small or sudden. They were signs I had ignored, warnings I had silenced. And now, looking back, every late night, every secretive glance at his phone, every cold shoulder, was leading up to this moment of cruelty. David wanted the world to see me as broken. But as I stood there replaying it all in my head, I felt something shift. He thought he had control of the story. He was wrong. The days after the graduation were a blur, but my mind refused to rest. I needed answers. I started with the places he thought I'd never look. In the glove compartment of his truck, tucked beneath old receipts, I found a recent bill for a hotel. The date lined up perfectly with one of his supposed late nights at work. My hands shook as I read it, bile rising in my throat. That discovery pushed me further. I went through our shared desk at home, digging until I came across statements for a credit card I didn't recognize, charges for expensive dinners, jewelry, weekend getaways. None of it was for me or the kids. My chest tightened as I flipped page after page, every dollar a knife to the heart. Then came the final piece. Hidden in his dresser under folded shirts was a second phone. My pulse hammered as I unlocked it. Messages filled the screen, intimate, reckless words that left no room for doubt. Her name appeared over and over, Rachel Adams. She was 29, someone he had met through his construction company. The photos told me everything. Smiling selfies at restaurants, arms wrapped around each other like they were a couple without ties or guilt. It was like being stabbed over and over. I couldn't breathe, but I couldn't stop scrolling either. Each message pulled me deeper into the betrayal. This wasn't a fling. This was a full-blown affair with someone young enough to be our daughter's older sister. He hadn't just lied to me. He had built a secret life with her. For a moment, rage nearly consumed me. I wanted to storm into his office, throw the phone in his face, and scream until the walls shook. But something inside me stopped. He had chosen to humiliate me in front of everyone. If I exploded now, I'd be playing his game. So I closed the drawer, put the evidence back, and steadied myself. I would not give him the satisfaction of seeing me break. I would wear a mask, the same way he had worn one for months. Behind it, I would carry the weight of his betrayal, every wound hidden beneath calm silence. He thought I didn't know. That was his mistake. I didn't trust myself to face this alone, so the first person I turned to was Susan. She came over one evening, sat across from me at the kitchen table, and just listened while I laid out everything I had found. Her face hardened, but her voice stayed steady. "Don't let him back you into a corner," she said. "You need to be smart, not loud." Her bluntness was the rope I clung to. Instead of breaking down, I forced myself to think clearly. Screaming at David or demanding answers would only give him the upper hand. He had already tried to paint me as the weak one. I refused to make his job easier. So I decided I wouldn't beg. I wouldn't argue. I would prepare. Quietly, I booked an appointment with an attorney. Sitting across from that polished desk, I felt both terrified and strangely powerful. I explained the situation, and the lawyer wasted no time pulling up financial records. What I saw nearly knocked the air out of me. David had been funneling cash into a separate account. Transfers here and there, small enough not to draw suspicion, but together they added up to thousands. He wasn't just betraying me emotionally, he was laying the groundwork to leave me stripped of security. I walked out of that office shaken but determined. Knowledge was my shield now. If David thought he could corner me, he was wrong. I knew his moves, and I would use that to my advantage. Back at home, I slipped into a role I never imagined playing. I smiled when he came in late, pretended to accept his flimsy excuses, even made small talk at dinner as if nothing had changed. To him, I was the same oblivious wife, still in the dark. But every night after the kids were asleep, I organized papers, copied files, and tucked evidence away where he'd never find it. It was a strange double life, acting like everything was fine while my stomach twisted with anger. But I kept telling myself this wasn't surrender. This was survival. The louder he laughed, the calmer I stayed, knowing that the silence I carried wasn't weakness at all. It was strategy. After the ceremony, I hoped the worst was behind me, but David made sure to twist the knife deeper. That evening, our families gathered at a restaurant to celebrate Lily's achievement. The room was filled with laughter, clinking glasses, and the smell of roasted chicken and bread, but beneath it all, my stomach churned. I could already sense he had something planned. When the waitress set down the wine, David rose from his chair with a smug smile. At first, everyone assumed he was going to toast Lily. Instead, he motioned toward the entrance, and in walked Rachel. She was dressed as if she belonged at the head of the table, not sneaking in as the other woman. David pulled out a chair for her right beside him, then introduced her, not as a guest, but as his future. The words sliced through the air, silencing the table. Lily's fork clattered onto her plate. Her eyes burned as she stared at her father, then at Rachel. Are you serious? You bring her here? On my night? Her voice shook with rage, drawing stares from nearby tables. David tried to smooth it over, placing a hand on Rachel's shoulder, but Lily wasn't backing down. She stood, her voice rising, calling him out for disrespecting not only me, but her as well. Mark shrank in his seat, clearly embarrassed, while Susan's jaw tightened like she was ready to jump across the table. The tension spread until the air felt heavy with shame. Through it all, I sat still, forcing my face into a mask of composure. My nails dug into my palms under the tablecloth, but I didn't let a word slip. I let him bask in his arrogance, believing I was powerless. Every glance, every sentence, every careless laugh he shared with Rachel, I burned it into memory. That night, once we were home, I began quietly documenting everything. I set my phone to record when he spoke freely, saving his careless admissions. I tucked away receipts from that dinner, notes about his words, even details about Rachel's presence. Each piece felt like a brick, slowly building a wall of truth. On the surface, I was silent, but inside, fire raged. David thought humiliation would crush me. Instead, it gave me purpose. I didn't have to wait long before David revealed his next move. Late one night, while pretending to scroll through his phone, I overheard him on a call in the garage. His voice was low, but the words were clear enough. He was preparing to move in with Rachel right away. No hesitation, no concern for how it would affect Lily, Mark, or me. He spoke as though I were already erased. My first instinct was to lash out, but I held back. Rage wouldn't serve me now. So when he casually mentioned his plans over breakfast a few days later, I lowered my eyes, nodded, and whispered, "If that's what you need." He studied me for a moment, then smirked, convinced he had broken me down. That was exactly what I wanted him to think. While he believed I was defeated, I was moving in silence. With the help of my lawyer, I shifted our joint savings into an account under my name. Everything was done legally, carefully, so there would be no way for him to accuse me of wrongdoing. Signing those papers felt like the first real breath I had taken in weeks. But the more I uncovered, the uglier it became. As I dug into his finances with the attorney, a different picture of his so-called success emerged. The construction business he bragged about at every family event wasn't thriving at all. It was drowning. Loans, overdue bills, unpaid suppliers. He had been patching holes in the company by draining from our savings, quietly propping up his failing empire with money meant for our children's future. The realization stung. All those years I trusted him to provide stability, to keep us secure, and he had been gambling it away while building a fantasy with another woman. My heart ached, but beneath the ache grew something stronger: clarity. Each step I took in secret was a step away from his control. He thought I was submissive, the wife too broken to stand up for herself. What he didn't know was that I was already tightening the net around him, piece by piece. His arrogance blinded him, and I was counting on it. I decided it was time to see Rachel face to face. I didn't call or announce myself. I waited outside her office one afternoon, knowing she'd have to pass me on her way out. When she spotted me, her expression flickered with surprise before hardening into a smug little smile. "Emily," she said smoothly, as if we were old acquaintances instead of enemies. "If you're here to beg, don't waste your breath." David's made his choice. Her arrogance made my stomach twist, but I kept my voice steady. "You think you know him, Rachel, but you don't. You're standing on quicksand, and you don't even realize it." She crossed her arms, chin lifted high. "He's divorcing you. It's only a matter of time before this is official. You can cling all you want, but it won't change anything." For a moment, I almost pitied her. She had no idea what she was stepping into. So I leaned closer, lowering my voice so only she could hear. "Has he told you about the loans? About the suppliers he hasn't paid? About the business teetering on collapse?" Her confident look wavered just enough for me to see the crack. She shook her head quickly, forcing a laugh. "You're just bitter, making up stories to scare me." "Check for yourself," I said calmly. "Look at the numbers. Ask the right questions. You'll see who he really is." I didn't push further. I wanted her to wonder, to let the doubt gnaw at her when she was alone with him. Every time he dodged a question or grew defensive, she would remember my words. Walking away, I didn't feel triumphant, but I felt something close to control. Rachel believed she was untouchable, but I had planted a seed. And seeds, no matter how small, have a way of growing in silence until they crack the surface. When David invited everyone over for what he called a fresh start dinner, I knew exactly what he was planning, a showcase of his new life, parading Rachel in front of the people who had once respected our marriage. I accepted the invitation without protest, keeping my expression neutral, while inside I prepared for the moment I'd been waiting for. The house was full that evening, relatives catching up, laughter echoing through the rooms, though I noticed the curious stares aimed at me and Rachel across the table. David stood at the head, beaming as if he were the king of this little gathering. He introduced her with the confidence of a man who thought he had already won. I let him bask for a while. Then, when silence settled, I rose from my seat. My hands didn't shake as I placed a stack of papers on the table, bank statements, receipts, contracts, even recordings. Since David seems to love surprises, I said, my voice calm but firm, I thought I'd share a few of my own. The room went still as I laid out every detail, nights spent with Rachel, the secret accounts, the drained savings, the unpaid debts that could swallow his business whole. Gasps broke out around the table, chairs scraped against the floor as people leaned forward, stunned. Rachel's smile faltered the moment she saw her own name on the receipts. Her eyes darted to David, searching for reassurance, but his face had lost its smugness. I went on, explaining how he had planned to leave me with nothing while building a fantasy with her, all on borrowed money and lies. Lily's face burned red with anger. Mark hung his head in shame, and Susan's lips curled in satisfaction. One by one, the people in that room turned against him. Murmurs rose, judgment heavy in every voice. Rachel shoved her chair back, her eyes wide with disgust. You told me you were free. You told me everything was under control. Without waiting for his reply, she stormed out, heels clattering against the floor. David reached out, desperate to regain control, but no one was listening. His carefully crafted image crumbled in front of the very audience he had hoped to impress. And for the first time, he was the one standing exposed. The silence after Rachel stormed out didn't last long. David's face turned crimson, and suddenly his voice tore through the room. He slammed his fist against the table so hard the glasses rattled. You think you're clever, Emily? You've destroyed me. You've ruined everything. His words came out in a roar, spit flying as he pointed a shaking finger in my direction. Relatives shifted uncomfortably, some stepping back as his anger grew louder. All those years I gave you, and this is how you repay me? You've poisoned my children against me. You've turned my family against me. You're nothing but a vindictive. His scream cracked, more animal than human. I didn't flinch. I didn't even raise my voice. I stood tall, keeping my hands folded in front of me. When his tirade paused for breath, I spoke evenly, letting each word land with precision. I filed for divorce weeks ago. Every account, every property, every penny has been secured legally. You can shout until your throat bleeds, but when this is over, all you'll be left with are the debts you tried to hide. The room stayed hushed, every eye locked on us. His chest heaved as he searched for a comeback, but his fury only made him look smaller. The same man who had stood at our daughter's graduation, puffed up with pride as he humiliated me, was now the one stripped bare in front of everyone. He tried again, voice breaking this time. You think people will side with you? You think they'll believe your lies? But no one stepped forward to defend him. Lily's glare was ice. Mark's disappointment was carved into his face. Susan's smirk said everything. I looked him in the eye, steady as stone. This isn't my doing, David. You built this with your own hands. And now you get to live with it. The echo of his scream lingered in the room, but the balance had shifted. The humiliation he had once staged for me had come back around, sharper and far more devastating. Only this time, I was the one standing unbroken. The weeks that followed moved quickly once the truth was out. Papers were signed, hearings were scheduled, and the marriage that had once defined half my life was officially dissolved. There was no fight left in David when it came to the settlement. Every attempt he made to contest was met with the trail of evidence I had carefully preserved. By the time the ink dried, he walked away stripped of the comfort he thought he would take with him. His business followed the same path. Word of unpaid debts spread fast, suppliers pulled out, and contracts evaporated. Without my savings to prop him up, the company crumbled under the weight of what he had been hiding. The man who once boasted about being the backbone of the community could no longer hold his head up in town. Rachel was gone too. After realizing just how deep his lies went, she cut ties and vanished from his life as abruptly as she had entered it. Whatever future he promised her dissolved into nothing. He was left alone, a shadow of the man he had tried to present to the world. For me, life didn't become easier overnight, but it became mine again. Lily and Mark stood firmly by my side, helping me heal in ways I hadn't expected. Susan never let me forget that strength had carried me this far, reminding me that I had won not by shouting louder, but by staying steady. Our little household found a new rhythm, one filled with honesty, laughter, and peace, even in the face of change. There are moments when I catch myself thinking back to the night at Lily's graduation, the sting of humiliation still sharp in memory. But those thoughts don't weigh me down anymore. They remind me of the turning point, the moment I chose not to break. Betrayal cut me open, but it also pushed me to rebuild with stronger walls and clearer eyes. I don't carry bitterness now. I carry clarity. I know what I endured, and I know what I became because of it. Freedom wasn't given to me. It was forged in the fire of his betrayal. And as I move forward, I do so not as the woman he tried to destroy, but as the woman who refused to fall. Do you think I made the right choice walking away, or should I have given them another chance? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell.